Hi, my name is David Terra. Welcome to Old Time Rock and Roll. In this video, I'm going to show you something a little bit different. Um, uh, this is a spreadsheet I made about a year ago. It's a list of what I consider roughly the top 3,000 rock and roll songs from about 1955 to 1990, which I basically think of as the rock and roll era. Maybe some of you might be disappointed that I don't have any songs from the 90s or later. And part of the reason for that is not that I don't like the music from after 1990 so much. I mean, part of it is that. I think part of the reason I stopped listening to rock and roll in the 90s was I just didn't like the popular music at the time as much. I never got into rap or grunge rock. I'm not a Nirvana fan, and I just kind of stopped liking the new music. Maybe part of because I'm getting older. The older generation hated rock and roll, and maybe I kind of have the same problem with grunge rock and rap. But anyway, it is a list of what I consider the top 3,000 songs from around 1955 to 1990. I think most people would agree 1955 was the beginning of the rock and roll era. Rock Around the Clock, that's what a lot of people consider, one of the first rock and roll songs that came out in 1955. There were a few others came out about the same time, Shaboom, um, Earth Angel. But anyway, here's a couple breakdowns of my list. So on the left, I have the top 10 artists on my list and how many songs from those artists. Notice, I'm a really big Beatles fan. I mean, I think the Beatles are hands down the greatest rock group of all time. So I put 91 Beatles songs on my list. That's a lot. I mean, that's like about twice as many as hits. They had, I think, something like 50 top 40 hits. But they had a lot of good songs that didn't make the top 40. A lot of classics. Um, and Rolling Stones are second on my list, close to Elvis. I'm not a huge Elvis fan. Elvis was great. A lot of people think he was the greatest rock and roll artist of all time. I don't. I mean, he didn't write his own music, and I think he was, a big reason he was popular was because he was very sexy. He was the first person kind of shook his pelvis on stage, and teenage girls went nuts over him, and he was one of the pioneers of rock and roll. But I just think he's overrated. Rolling Stones, they were great, but some people think the Stones were as great as the Beatles, even better. I don't, but they were great. They're number two on my list. Elton John, I think everybody considers him amazing, and he's still singing today. Beach Boys, I guess I really like the Beach Boys in part because they were the first rock and roll artist group that I was exposed to. My uncle bought my sister and me a bunch of Beach Boys albums when I was about 10 years old. So I do really like the Beach Boys. Also, I grew up in California, so they were a big California band. Supremes, they had a lot of hits. So they're next after the Stevie Wonder. I think most people would consider him one of the greatest, at least one of the greatest Motown artists. He's amazing. I mean, I think there is some truth to the idea that your other senses are enhanced. Of course, he was blind since birth, but he had an amazing sense of music, and you could just tell it in his songs. Billy Joel, I'm a big fan of Billy Joel. I don't know why. I mean, I just think he was a really great songwriter, and I think his songs are very meaningful. Chicago, I really like Chicago. I used to live in Chicago. I actually saw the band in concert. They're an amazing band, and they have that Chicago sound with their brass section. Eagles, like I said, I'm from California, and I think most people would consider the Eagles one of the greatest bands from California. So those are my top 10 bands on my list, and that's how many songs out of the 3,000 they had. And then on the right here, I have them by year, and um, pretty uniform, I'd say, from around 1955 to around 1990. Hardly anything from the 90s on my list. Like I said, I don't know that much music from the 90s. There's a few groups I like from the 90s. I don't know that many. A couple I really like are Smash Mouth. I saw Smash Mouth at a concert a few weeks ago. They're pretty amazing. I also like the Spice Girls, and I don't know that many other '90s artists. I guess Sheryl Crow, Bonnie Raitt, but I mean, I think most of it's just because I don't know that many. But notice that the peak here is late '60s. I have 653 songs from 1965 to 1969. That's what I consider the heyday of rock and roll. That was kind of the psychedelic era, when you had the San Francisco psychedelic sound from Haight Ashbury. Not only that, but the Beatles were really strong then, and the British invasion. I mean, I just think that was an amazing era, not just for its music, but just for the whole mood of the country. I mean, that was also during the Vietnam War, and the whole young generation was demonstrating against that, and they were trying to change the world for the better, and a lot of that got expressed in their music. So that's why I'm a big '60s fan. But like I said, I like the whole rock era. I like the '50s too. I also like the '70s. There are a lot of songs from the '70s and '80s. It starts kind of going downhill. I like the early '80s, maybe not the late '80s as much. But there was a lot of good music in the '80s. So anyway, that's my breakdowns, and um, this is the legend. So I didn't show you my list. Maybe I should show you a little bit of my list. I don't want to spoil it for you. So this is the bottom of my list. The bottom 20 songs, and they're not bad songs. I mean, 3,000's a lot of songs, but I know a lot. And actually, there's a lot of songs I like that didn't make my list. So I'd say the bottom of my list. These are sort of so-so to good songs in my opinion. And then, like I said, I have them color coded. I have this legend here. So red songs on my list were number one on Billboard. Yellow top 10, green top 40, but they didn't make the top 10. Blue means they were what we'll call minor hits, top 100, but they didn't make the top 40. The ones with a red background or ones that failed to chart. Actually, there were a few really good songs, not very many, but there were a few. I guess some of them are even considered classics that failed to chart. There were some songs that weren't released as singles, actually, some of the best ones, I think. And then there were songs that they were flip side singles. I guess the A side did really well, and the flip side didn't do so well. So the flip side didn't chart, but there were some good ones like that. So anyway, that's my legend, and here's the end of my list. Like I said, I'm not gonna give any more spoilers, but you can see examples of all those. So there's a few number one songs at the bottom of my list here. As a matter of fact, number 3,000, Dominique by the Singing Nun. I don't know how many of you guys know that song. I think it's kind of a joke. It was number one. I think it was the last number one song of 1963, just a month or so before the Beatlemania. And it's kind of interesting because if you look at the music from the early '60s, I think most of it wasn't really that great. I mean, it was very commercial. There was all this payola scandals, and a lot of it was just kind of kind of commercialized teen stuff. Wasn't all bad from that era, but Dominic is kind of a joke. I have a couple other number ones at the bottom of my list. Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship. A lot of people say Starship sold out in the '80s. They started out as Jefferson Airplane. They were one of the big psychedelic bands from the late '60s, but then they became commercial in the '80s, and I still think they were really good. But Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now is a little bit of a joke too, because it was used as a theme song from this terrible movie that I never saw called Mannequin. And then the other number one at the bottom of my list is Disco Duck. A lot of people think that's the worst song ever recorded. I don't think so. I think it's funny. Some people like it. Some people hate it. It's one of those novelty songs that I guess But those are the number ones at the end of my list. One thing I want to point out here is that I've seen lists of what people consider top songs of all time. Some of those lists just go purely based on chart performance. I don't like those lists because there were some terrible songs that were number one for like over 10 weeks. Actually, Endless Love, that was number one for 9 weeks. I hate that song. It did make my list though, because this isn't really my personal list. It's a list of what I consider most people think are greatest songs. I just happen to hate that song. But then those are the number ones at the bottom of my list. I've got a few top tens that didn't go to number one. You can see them in yellow. I'm not going to go over every song. And then there's a lot of green ones. Those are ones that made the top 40, but not the top 10. And the white ones, like I said, those are ones that weren't released as a single. And there are a lot of good songs like that. Number 2999, Revolution 9. I don't know if I even know that song. It was on the Beatles' White Album. Very unusual song. I don't know if it's even really a song. It's kind of a auditory art. There's not really music in it. It starts out number nine, number nine. This is a kind of weird song, but I think it's very artistic, so I put it on my list. And I have a couple other white ones. Dirty Work by Steely Dan. Steely Dan was a good artist, a good band, but I guess that one wasn't released as a single. Neither was Please Mr. Postman by the Beatles. That was a remake of a song by the Marvelettes. And then I've got, like I said, there are a few songs that failed to chart. They were released as singles but didn't chart. Knocking on Heaven's Door by Eric Clapton. I don't know why that one didn't chart. I think it's a really good song. Of course, Bob Dylan did the original version. I guess Eric Clapton did a remake. I think it's a good version. But for whatever reason, it didn't chart. Play with Fire, that's an example of a flip side song that didn't chart. Pretty good song by the Rolling Stones. So anyway, those are just some examples of some songs on my list. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you, I'm happy to, sell you guys a copy of my list. I have it on my computer, and I'll sell it to you. It's yours for $5. And the way I'll do it is you can send me a comment in the comments section at the end of this video. And if you're interested in buying a copy, just send me your email address, and I'll email you back a copy. But I would like payment, so we can arrange for payment either by PayPal. Maybe PayPal is the best way to do it. But anyway, we'll make that arrangement, and once I get the money from you, I'll be happy to send you my list, and I hope you enjoy it. And you can also send me comments about how you like my list, whether or not you agree with the songs that are on it, or maybe there's some songs that you think are really excellent that didn't make my list, or maybe there's some songs you really hate that are near the top of my list and think they don't think they belong there. I'm happy to hear feedback from you guys, and I might even update my list at some point. Maybe you guys can even help me make a new list, based on your votes. This is completely mine. So anyway, I just thought you guys might be interested in this. So send me your comments. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.